Find one person that you call the person, your Moses, for you to follow. That's it. The beauty of that goes back to the bottom line down there, and this is why I said this part's so important. Because our tendency is, I want someone who will tell me what I want to hear. Now, here's the justification. The justification is, this person doesn't know everything that they need to know to be able to teach me everything I need to know. Right? So that's the justification in going and looking outside. The principle behind that is that God says this, and this is another text. Even through someone you submit yourself to, even through their ignorance and foolishness, God will teach you truth. It's an absolutism. So the principle is humble yourself and put yourself under someone else's instruction that is intimate with you. It's different than, and I'll say this, it's different than putting yourself under the instruction of a rabbi or a pastor. You still want to do that because it's one voice of theology coming your way, right? So if I'm going to go listen to Rabbi Messer, and then I'm going to go listen to T.D. Jakes, and then I'm going to go listen to Joel Osteen, and then I'm going to listen to this Buddhist person, and then I'm going to listen to so-and-so, and then I'm going to read a book by. I have a lot of voices going on, and they're all, I'm not going to say anybody's bad. I'm just saying at some point in time, when you get too many voices speaking, what does it turn into?
Babble.
Noise. It just turns into noise. And you really can't make out. If we were all start talking at the same level at the same time, eventually what happens is nobody can hear anything anybody's saying. And it becomes distracting. So the importance is that you have to find someone that you say, and you allow God to say, this is a person. My experience is it's typically been the person that I would not have picked for myself. That's just been my experience. You know, it's not the person I walk in the room and I'm like, that's my guy, man. Because we're going to pick somebody that's like us. That's our tendency. I'm going to pick somebody that's just like me. You know, they look like me, they act like me, they're bro like me. And go train together, bro, hang out together, get the same story. And God's going to pick, you know, the wackadoo in the corner that drives me crazy every time he walks in the room. More than likely. I mean, that's been what I've learned the most. So I'll give you guys an example of before I do that. Can everyone see how they would struggle with that?
Yeah.
So the fact that, how many people in here have one sponsor, have a sponsor that's their sponsor, that they go through for everything? Like other than wiping your butt and eating food, and putting your clothes on every day, anything outside like your normal day-to-day operations, you bounce everything off of them. Anybody? Other than Jake. Jake's been clean long enough where he should have enough time where he's not having to go through as much of the fundamental stuff. I mean, it does, you grow up a little bit. So the most valuable thing you can do in this situation is put yourself shoulder to shoulder with someone who's going to teach you how to do everything and show you how to do everything. And find that one person to listen to so that you have some way of gaining clarity. Like it said here, I think it said, I'm going to find where it said, there's one of the best means we have for finding clarity on all aspects of our lives, great and small. So here's a question. Are there areas in your life where you currently do not have clarity? Okay? Let's take that same area that you're thinking about right now. Have you gone to your sponsor with that in that area of your life, and that unclarity, sat down one-on-one with them and positioned yourself in the position of humility that says, here's the situation I have unclarity with, and here's the powerful part. What do you want me to do? And in your mind, you know whatever comes out of that person's mouth, you're going to do without arguing. If they said, here's what I want you to do. I want you to go outside and, work on the truck for 9 hours. What? It's like Mr. Miyagi, right? What do you mean up a brush it, down a brush it? I'm trying to learn how to do karate over here. You've been having me sand the back patio, But there's a master plan involved, right? How many of us can say we've done that with those same areas of clarity? Everybody? You know? Thanks for being honest. You're good? You're good? I already know your answer. You're good? Okay. So that's good. So we got what? Some good, some not. So it's an area of opportunity for all of us as men. Then again, going back to what we just talked about, what is the difficulty in doing that? Why is it so hard for us to do?
Humility, pride.
Okay, pride, ego, right?
Non-control.
Non-control. Yeah, because what you're saying is, I'm giving
You
control.
tell me what to do.
I'm giving control to God or whoever else it is, and and whoever this person that God's put in my life, who I'm trusting God put in my life to tell me what to do. Okay. So I'm gonna tell you guys a little bit about. So I had a meeting with my old sponsor today. After a year and whatever, after we separated, and I had to do some soul searching recently on my part in our separation, because my sponsor was also the pastor at the church I was at and all that kind of stuff. So I had to take a real good look at that and say, what's my part, my side of the street to clean up? So I was working through my steps. And what the conclusion I came to was, in a nutshell, I wasn't transparent and totally honest with him all the way through. There was a point where there was numerous points. It started with when I started going down the journey into Hebrew roots and Torah. I didn't get his input on what he thought. And had I gotten his input, the story would have gone different. I don't know how the story would have gone. It would have gone different. After that, once I started learning everything, had I gone to him and said, here's all the stuff I'm learning, I got some real issues with where I was and where you are and where I am and feel like I'm going, things would have been totally different. And I would have been able to let him tell me what to do. Now the reality is, knowing him and knowing what we discussed today, he would have told me to part ways and go down that path because he knew and I knew it was right for me. But I didn't give him the opportunity to do that because I was worried that he was going to tell me something I didn't want to hear. And so because I did that, I prolonged that disobedience in doing that, prolonged and caused a chain reaction of damage that I'm now 100% responsible for, and I've cleaned up today. But I had to go through a year of my life of being upset, being frustrated, my wife being upset, being frustrated, them being hurt and frustrated, the church being upset and frustrated, because my fear and insecurity didn't allow me to go to the person in my life that I was supposed to go to and be transparent and accept instruction, which was the cornerstone of what I used to tell everybody in my recovery was, or not my recovery, just recovery, was having a man in your life that you go to and you tell, you're totally honest with and say, here's what's going on, what do I do? And trusting that God's going to speak through this person the truth of what needs to take place in your life. Does that make sense? And so I prolonged all that and caused a lot of issues, because I refused to get totally, as Jason would say, totally naked with him. It sounds really weird. If you're watching this online, it's not what it sounds like. Naked equals exposing my spirit and thoughts. So, I had to learn the lesson the hard way, right? And now I'm having to go clean that up. Thank God for the steps and things like that, because at least I know when I make a mistake now how I can go clean it up, much like you guys do. But so everyone here, well, not everyone, but a majority of the people here. Well, let me re-ask the question again. So, and I want people to answer this if you're there. So, how many people have areas of unclarity in their life again? There was a couple. 1, 2. There's no struggling. You did at one point in time. You got that cleared up?
Yeah, and it boiled down to exactly what I'm hearing right now.
Okay. You?
I'd say getting clarity as of like completely just like all the time.
All right, so in those areas of unclarity, out of the ones that there was a couple of you guys, have you gone and discussed that with your sponsor? Okay, I already know your answer. So the question yourself is why, right? And take a look at what some of that internal conflict or conversation is that causes you not to do that, right? And some of it could be I just wasn't aware that I needed to, and some of it could be if I'm real honest with myself, I didn't want to. I knew it was kind of like I don't. It's like when you don't want to go to your parents, right? Like you did something wrong. Well, I knew what they were going to say. I don't want to hear it. It's kind of that mentality. But we go back to that's not. Those aren't the principles that we're talking about here. Avoidance and isolation or manipulation or any of those things are all the things that got this group where they got, right? And potentially ruined everything for them. And in the worst case scenario, where I related to this too was, even after I've made restoration with the people that I met with today, and even after Moses went back up and prayed and said, God forgive them, blah, 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 and God said, I'm not going to wipe them out, we're all good, the relationship changed. He said, I won't be in your midst anymore. He changed. Everything changed. So it wasn't that they didn't have a relationship, but things changed because of the decisions that were made. Even to this day, there's still that day is a reoccurring event in Israel history of tragedy. On the calendar, if you go back all the time, they got this awful day on the calendar that all kinds of things happen that tie back to this day. So we can permanently, in some ways, negatively impact ourselves by being resistant to following what we need to follow and positioning ourselves. It says it's a hard. Think about this. Wrap your head around it for a second, because it's not an easy position to get yourself in. It might be early on, and when you're here, it's a lot easier. It's a lot. You don't have all the distractions you got going on. You're here. Jason's in your face. The guys are in the house. I remember when I was in DACO and recovery was just saturated all over me. It was a lot easier. I thought it was hard at the time, but I look back now, it was real easy. When I got in the business world and you start getting responsibility, and then you get in the real world and you start getting some success under your belt, and other people look to you and things start going your way, your natural tendency is it's not as easy in that position to get and look at someone and say, I'm going to let you tell me, speak into my life that way. It's not. I mean, imagine yourself. I'll imagine myself going to a meeting, and I'm making, whatever dollars a year, and I'm listening to a guy that doesn't even come close. I've got to be pretty humble to sit down and listen to what this guy has to say, right? He doesn't look like me. He doesn't look like he doesn't have the education I had. Maybe I've got a master's degree or college degree, or this person's never even graduated high school. Doesn't mean they can't speak into my life, right? If God's put him as my sponsor, it's not him. That person's not limited by their education, and for God to use them in my life. So but again, looking at where we are in each one of our timelines, I would challenge you to say, where am I on my timeline, right? And am I in a position where I am maximizing that relationship? That's probably the best way to put it tonight. Am I maximizing my relationship with my sponsor? Am I getting everything out of it that I could possibly get? And if I am, if I am in a place where I look at my sponsor and think I've gotten everything out of my sponsor I can possibly get, then it's probably time to consider getting a new sponsor. And that's not a knock, right? There are people that God puts in our life for certain periods of time that are there to feed us in certain ways. And then at some point in time, we kind of outgrow that. It's kind of like at some point in time, you'll outgrow living in the Adonai house. It'll be a different season, however long that is. For some people, it's 6 months. For some people, it's longer. But there's transitions that take place, and those people could change. I would beg to say that most of us could look at the people in our lives and say we haven't gained everything from those people. You know, if we're real honest, there's plenty of nuggets for us to still gain. It's a matter of humbling ourselves to do it. All right. So how much time we got? We got a little bit. I lost my question, so that's more. Okay, since everybody's got their sponsor for the most part, I thought it would be interesting to see. Well, if I were to say, tell me the one principle your sponsor has taught you that sticks out more than any other principle, what would that be? At this point in time in your recovery, what's the most impactful thing that your sponsor has taught you?
Unrealistic expectation.
Okay.
Looking in the mirror and being honest with yourself.
Okay. So that's self-reflection daily. Okay.
Going back to the basics. Anything's out of whack, going back to the same principles that I have to do every day that got me to where I am. If I'm out of whack, go back to the basics. Get back in order.
I'd say looking at every situation as a learning opportunity or a growth opportunity.
Okay.
Being willing, making yourself available, open to I guess something that we were talking about. You mentioned it too. Doing things that you do not want to do just so that you know that it's something that makes you uncomfortable. So you're open to like putting yourself in those uncomfortable situations and open to growth.
It's kind of hard because it's not just one thing for me with Jason. It's multiple things. There's always got to be action. Back to the basics where I came in to where I'm at now, and to always, I guess, just to meditate on everything that he says. Not to just as soon as you are done with him to go do whatever you like. To actually sit down and think about and go over everything that he just said, and not to just let it go in one ear and out the other.
Cool. So I've had 3 sponsors. First one was always remember there's somebody who needs what you have. Second one was, I always smile when I think about this guy. I would sum it up in 2 words I use quite a bit: listen and do. He always taught me to listen a lot. Listen, and do, And the third one was don't ever allow yourself to think you've gotten to a point where you still don't have things to work on. That was I'm always, he worded it a little bit differently. That's kind of how I hear it. But he always worded it as just like, we're all broken and sinful people, So don't ever think you've gotten to a point where, you don't have junk, that you need to deal with. So those are probably the biggest 3 for me with those guys. Anybody else? Very good. We got about 20 minutes, so maybe a little bit less. I got a bunch of questions on here, but I'm trying to think which one I want to go with. Let me ask you guys, do you guys have any questions? Because I asked a bunch of questions, throw them out there, but do you guys have any questions? When it comes to the topic of everything we kind of looked at tonight, which, you know, sponsorship's the umbrella we were kind of going under, but there's a lot of stuff we've talked about underneath there. What, do you guys have any questions?
I guess maybe you could clarify something for me when I look at this story and how I've looked at it kind of in the past, as far as the people's reaction to the delay, you know, that the timing where Moses was on Mount Sinai and hadn't come back down yet, and the panic starts to rise, and they start to, you know, jump to these, you know, what are we going to do, and trying to figure things out on their own. Because of that lack of their leader at the time, to me was, you know, there was for the Israelites at the time, there was a separation from God that they created, not that there actually was one. Because of Moses, they kind of looked at Moses as, you know, doing all these things, delivering them from Egypt, you know, guiding them, and then now they're just kind of sitting in the wilderness and waiting on him to come back from keeping God. But they didn't feel as if they could have a personal, I guess, relationship with God. It was contingent on him, and now that if there was a possibility of him not coming back, that they needed to find another vehicle, or, you know, another connection to God.
Mm-hmm.
For me, it was kind of like a way of, you know, and I hear what we talk about for, like, you know, the last little bit here about having somebody that we, you know, that's tangible here, that we can, you know, look to for guidance, but also at the same time to not separate ourselves from God because of somebody else maybe not being there in a moment that we need a person, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, I think there's that component, right? Like they couldn't, they had, I don't know if
Maybe they weren't taught
So,
properly.
because it is so new, it wasn't taught.
yeah,
You know,
they weren't at
that's-
the point. It was a testing stage for them to see. Like they didn't have all the instruction. He was up there getting the instruction. You got to remember, they can still see everything. They can't see Moses, but they can see this huge thing going on, right?
Yeah.
So they're coming to their own conclusions. Moses left Aaron in charge. So one of the things we've got to remember is he didn't just go up the mountain and leave nobody there. So it'd be like if your sponsor was going out of town and was going to be you're not going to be able to get in touch with me for the next 30 days. I need you to call Jake if you have any issues. Now your choice at that point in time is, I can call Jake, I cannot call Jake, and I don't have the relationship with Jake that I did with Bob, my sponsor. So I can call Jake and snowball Jake and manipulate Jake to give me the answers that I want him to give me, because he doesn't know me as well, right? Those are kind of my answers there. So there's that component of that, and I get what you're saying, like with the whole disconnection with God. There was this whole thing. I mean, you can look at it and go, you know, the interesting part for me is, and what other time in the story has the leading character come down off the mountain, come down, led people out of bondage, gone back up, and people seem to be worried that he might not come back.
Talking about, you know, talking about Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
So
they take things in their own hands and create their own way of relating with God.
maybe for me personally, I don't know. 'Cause I don't really know anybody. But I see it, the connection there, but at the same time, that was kind of like the beginning of that personal relationship that we could individually have because of Jesus Christ saying, I am God. You know, I am part given to you guys. I'm going to come down, I'm going to walk, I have to eat, drink, I'm not, you know, my flesh is like yours now, and I'm going to, you know, present myself as an equal, but yet I'm still the Son of God. Mm-hmm. And so that kind of, that to me, that's a little bit, because Moses was not, he was chosen to be this leader and this, I guess, like the spiritual teacher for them, but he was not, you know, I guess, preaching that he was the Messiah and that, you know, he was going to have to, you know, telling at least his small group of people, his disciples, that he was going to leave and that he would one day come back. Mm-hmm. But I understand.
Yeah, it's a picture. I'm not saying Moses is Jesus.
No,
it's a picture of. So one of the things to peel back, I don't want to get too theological here, is that one of the misconceptions is that people could not have a personal relationship with God before Jesus. There was no before Jesus. There is no before Jesus. Well, let me rephrase this. If you believe Jesus is God, then there is no before Jesus. If you don't believe Jesus is God, then there could be a before Jesus. So there's something different that took place when he came down, or when Jesus Christ was in the flesh, than obviously with Moses or anybody else for that matter ever in history. But as a picture and as a guide to our relationship with each other and with God, which is what the stories in the book are all about, it still keeps us in that phase of how do we relate to each other, and how do we relate to God, and what are these lessons trying to teach us about that, right? So I get your point, and I'm not going to say you're wrong. You're not wrong. It's just, you know, I think we're getting off into theology a little bit, which is not where we were going. Your question being, and your point being very valid around, they felt a disconnect because what they knew is their relationship with God, whether they were too reliant upon Him or not, it doesn't. That's a debatable and almost irrelevant fact. It changed, and their feeling about that, right? Their feelings about that changed, right? That could be one of the major arguments and debates that they were all going through was, well, something's different, right? I don't feel the same. Our relationship doesn't feel the same. And whether that was because they waited too much, put too much weight on Moses to deliver that relationship to them, or whether that was actually the case. The point being is now we're in a point in the journey where seemingly and by appearance, right, the relationship seems different. And so how do we respond to that? And, you know, we look at how they responded to it. Well, they responded to it with fear, worry, panic, which turned into taking matters into their own hands, right? So when we feel like there's something and we get into a place in our walk where things seem to be changing, right, and maybe that relationship feels like it's distanced, right, or stressed or separated, how do we respond? Because what happened was, let's just take that as a reality. Let's just say that's what really happened. So there was a conversation that would have taken place inside someone's brain called, oh my gosh, you know, God likes Moses better than us. He's taken him up on the mountain. Who knows what he's doing? Maybe they're talking about the fact that we're not the chosen people, that really we screwed up or something like that, and God's going to take them somewhere else and pick some other people. We need to figure out something to do for ourselves, right? So there's this whole weird conversation that could take place that is negative, right? It brings to a negative conclusion because of the unknown. There's an unknown, and we come to a negative conclusion. So it's a great principle to talk about. Typically, what happens, like think about at work, think about in your other environments, when people don't know things, do most people think like, hey, my boss hasn't talked to me in a couple days, or my boss said he wants to talk to me, I don't know what it's about. Do most people go, I can't wait, he's probably going to give me a promotion and a raise, and he's probably going to tell me I'm doing a good job and that he loves me, right? Most people come to a negative conclusion. Oh my gosh, he's probably going to write me up, or probably something else, what's this all about? They go down this whole panic column, and then if we work ourselves into a big enough frenzy, we will either self-sabotage, or we will start reacting poorly to other people around us, or gravitate towards something else, right? So it's really about when we are presented with the unknown, how do we define the unknown? What position do we take with unknown? Do we take a position of faith? Because remember you said earlier they took a position of no faith. Do we take a position of faith called, I know that I don't understand everything right now, but I'm going to choose to believe that in this unknown that God is good, God has my back, I'm going to be obedient, and good things will happen, right? Even if it presents itself as difficult or odd or uncomfortable, I'm going to take that stance. Or do I take the panic stance? And that's the real meat and potatoes out of what we're talking about tonight, really, when it comes down to it, is when things change, when you get uncomfortable, when it seems like everything around you is going in a different direction, how do you remain in a position of obedience through that and not get distracted by what you think is going on versus what is really going on? Does that make sense?
Which kind of segues through the rest of their experience.
Mm-hmm.
You know, preparing them for faith. You know, that they're going to be wandering around for a really long time.
Yeah.
And wondering what is going on, and not reverting to control. You know, to jump to conclusions, something like that.
It's a repetitive pattern throughout their story, right?
Yeah.
Is God keeps putting them in a position that says, are you going to trust me or not? Are you going to trust me? And within trusting me, are you going to obey me? Right? And I'm going to keep putting you in these weird positions. They get to the edge of the promised land. What happens? The unknown presents itself again. Even though he's told them it's going to be good, he's told them it's going to be this, the unknown presents itself. We've got story after story after story. Korah's rebellion. All these different ones where different groups say, you know, what's going on? Why this? Why that? And they take their thoughts and let their negative thoughts rule them, which repositions them in a bad place. You know, versus saying, okay, a thought pattern and a belief system of faith says what, and that's why it's so important for us to get down the core components of who God is, who I am, and how God operates, right? And that's really what Torah and recovery teach us, is the operating procedures of God, so that I can look at it when I see this unknown situation and say, okay, what are the operating procedures here? Because I can trust in those are much more tangible, right? I believe that's why God gave us such specific instructions in certain areas to follow. Even though we don't know exactly what the result's going to be, it gives us something to hold on to. You know, it gives us something to grab onto in those situations. Say, I don't know how this is going to end, but I know if I do these things, then these things will happen. There's a whole lot of if-then principle in Scripture, over and 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 over, right? It's a math formula. If, then, if, then, if, then, if, then. So if I know enough of the if-thens, that's all I got to do, right? If I do this, then this will happen. And I can trust in that. There's a lot of stuff in my life where I look at stuff with my wife and I go, I don't know. You know, one of the things I know I was supposed to do today when I met with somebody to make amends is you sit down, you construct the meeting a couple ways. There's a prayer, there's a meal offering, and there's a financial offering. Right? Came out, Rabbi said that last week. So I knew I needed to bring those things to the table. How do I figure out how much money I need to put in the offering? Enough to make me hurt. It's the amount that I know it makes me very uncomfortable, because then it means something. So that's what I did today. And I looked at my wife, goes, I got your back 100%, because we know if I obey these principles, then something good will happen. I don't know what it is. I don't know if I'll go home tonight and win the lottery, or I don't know if it just means that I get free from the hurt and the stuff that I had in the past. Either way, I don't do, you know, we've got to get in that mode of, I don't obey because I know the then. Because that removes faith, right? That removes all faith. If I knew exactly what God was going to do every time I did something, that doesn't require any faith. That you know, that's just simple. You know, that's almost math, like you memorized it. You know, 1 + 1 is 2. So I already know I'm going to get 2. But we know we'll get something. We just don't know exactly what it is, but we do know it'll be good. So grasping onto those in those unknown situations and understanding those and learning those becomes crucial. You know, and again, had I not known with this situation what to go do once I identified the things, is it comfortable? No. Did I want to make the phone call? No. Did I want to send the emails? No. Did I want to go sit down and have lunch? Not really. Did I want to take money out of my bank account that I really don't have to spend to do this? No. None of that. But it doesn't matter what I want. What I want's irrelevant. What I want, and I always go back to, when you look at recovery, you got to say what? Shoulda, woulda, coulda, left a long time ago. Because I should have been dead, I could have been dead, and I would have been dead had God not for some reason decided to miraculously move me out of Egypt. So I've got to go with what he does, which is, he says, do this, whatever, dude. It sure makes life a lot easier when you really submit to it. And then, again, that's where the sponsor comes in. You know, I wouldn't have this clarity. You know, I'm at a place right now where I don't technically have a sponsor, so I go to Jason for everything. You know, I've asked Jason to be that person, and because I can trust him, I know that God's going to use him, I know he's going to speak for me. And that's not the easiest thing for me to do. You know, he's been a peer, he's a friend, and he's been a peer since I've known him. So it does take some humility to say, I'm going to submit to the process and to the program and know that, you know, regardless of what Eric wants or what he thinks, I know this person's in my life to help me, you know. And if I can submit to the process and to him, then I'm going to benefit from that. And at the same time, you know, all of us are going to benefit from that, because I go back to the other principle. It's about you. It's about, you know, everybody. You know, there's somebody that needs what you're getting. And if I stop getting, then I don't have anything to give anybody. All right, enough talking for me. I got on my soapbox for a second, sorry. But again, it kind of goes back to the last line, right? When we do that, we may be able to hear the voice of God. And I don't know about you guys. Most of what I want all the time is, God, I just want you to tell me what you want me to do. You know, what am I supposed to do in this situation? What am I supposed to do? And have clarity and feel good about that this is what God wants me to do. And I will tell you this. Every single time I have submitted myself to a sponsor, mentor, whatever you want to call it, and said, what do I do? And they've told me to go do it, no matter how crazy, how wacky, how uncomfortable, what it has always worked out fantastic. It has always been beyond what I thought it was going to be, and solved more than I thought it was going to solve, and freed me more than what I thought it was going to free me. So the evidence for me is there. Do I still struggle with it? Yeah, because I got an ego. You know, so I still have to humble myself to get into that position. First position, right? Look in the mirror. Get real. Humble myself so I can get in the next position. So I'm going to quit rambling. We're at 9 o'clock. Everybody good? Anybody got any thoughts, comments, concerns, questions? Thank you for this first night here, man. You participate a lot. It's awesome. Some guys, you know, they sit here for like a month before they say anything. We have to like step on their toe just to get them to say ow. You got anything? You good? Counselor?
Good.
All good? Anything else?
Thanks for having me tonight.
Yeah, that's awesome. You got anything?
I got a lot of things.
You got digesting?
What I needed to get.
Cool. You got anything?
No, I'm good.
You good?
Good.
Good? Good? I didn't ask you, sorry. Good?
No, I just want to say thank you guys for sharing your night with me. I appreciate you having me. And
Thanks for coming.
it's cool. Enjoyed it.
Come back.
She brought us right there.
I hope you got a lot.
I'll definitely
The first thing I want you to do is just watch the recording. Give him a hard time. Yeah, Shabbat. Cool. As usual, thank you for letting me come in the house, guys, because this is one of the highlights of my week. I have to equate it up there with being able to spend time with my wife and my kids. But I consider that I'm awful at this. The whole thing's going to be this bottle. I really appreciate you guys letting me come over here and cooking dinner and all that kind of stuff. I look forward to it every week. So it is an important part of my life. And I'm excited because going through what I've gone through in the last week and a half or 2 weeks with Jason and this situation has helped me get fired back up, you know, about doing what I know God's called me to do, and being involved with you guys and here. And, you know, I knew when I started feeling like stagnant and that there was something dragging me back, because I've never felt that way in my recovery before. So yeah, I appreciate you guys letting me, because just so you guys know, when I started coming here a little over a year ago, I guess it was, when everything went down, you know, this place has saved me over the last year. This has been, you know, for the most part, you guys are my only recovery. So I just want you guys to know that's important. You guys are important to me, you know, in my life, in my family's life. And as much as I come over here and talk and hope that you guys pick up stuff, I pick up a lot from you guys too. And I appreciate that, and I thank you for that. So anyway, signing off.
Brought to you by